All right, 10-5, solving quadratic equations by completing the square. All right, we have got 4 steps that we are going to follow. We're going to write our steps in our left-hand column. All right, so our steps. Step 1. If you have a C, move the C. Remember, your C tells you what your y-intercept is, but sometimes that y-intercept is the origin, which is 0. And so if it's 0, we usually don't put plus 0 in an equation, so that would be why you may not have a C. It'd be because it's 0 and it's not there. So if you have one, we're going to move it. Then 2. Okay. If your A is not 1, we are going to factor out A, all right, from what's left on the left-hand side, and we will practice that with this one here. All right, and then 3. You'll do step 3 each and every single time. We are going to make it perfect. Okay, we're going to talk through each of these steps. All right, so first you're going to half it. Okay, and then we're going to square it. We'll talk about what it is when we're doing it. And then we are going to add it. And very important that you are adding it to both sides, okay? Because what you do to one side, you have to do to the other, all right? Very, very important to both sides, all right? And then once we have made it perfect, then step 4, we're going to solve it. All right. Now, let's talk about step 3, all right? So step 3, we're going to talk about some of our steps in here. So we have x squared minus 18x plus blank. Inside this blank, okay, would be our C. And we're wanting to complete the square, which means we want it to be a perfect square. All right, so we're going to find the C that would make this term a perfect square. Well, how do we find a C? Well, we are going to reverse factor, basically. So we have our factor rectangle, okay? We're going to factor some number, all right? We're going to put it in that box and then in that box, okay? That's our C. Well, remember when we factored, we got 2 numbers that when we added those together, they equaled B. Well, negative 18 is my B, so negative 18. Okay, so I have set up my factor rectangle. We know B. Okay, we want to find 2 numbers that are the same number that equal B. So we're going to half it. So half of negative 18 is negative 9. Now we have negative 9. We're going to square it. So negative 9 squared is 81. Well, if C is 81, we factor it into 2 numbers. Negative 9 times negative 9 is indeed 81. And your 2 numbers did have to add up to B, and negative 9 plus another negative 9 is negative 18. So in the square goes 81. And if we were solving this, then we would add it to the other side and then solve it. All right, so that's how this works. So what does this equation look like now? Okay, now that we know what C is. Well, we're going to take the x from x squared, and we're going to take one of our factors, which we squared. And we've got x minus 9 squared. We have a perfect square. Now how do we get from here to there? Well, x minus 9 squared. X minus 9 times x minus 9. Because that's what squaring is. Multiply something times itself. And if you FOIL this out, you end up with x squared minus 18x plus 81. You end up back where we started from. All right, so this is where we're going. And then once you get there, we can solve it. We set it equal to 0. So what is x when y is 0? Well, x minus 9 equals 0. Add 9 to both sides, and x equals 9. Okay? So let's try it. Let's try it. All right. Step 1, move C. All right. So move C. Here's my C. We're going to mathematically move it. So plus 200, mathematically move it, minus 200. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So x squared plus 26x. We now have an empty box. We're adding, okay? And 32 minus 200 is minus 168. And since we have an empty box on the left, we're going to add an empty box on the right. We're going to fill them here shortly, all right? But this is going to remind us that what we do on the left, we must do on the right, so we have 2 empty boxes. We moved our C. Step 2, factor out A. Well, A is 1, so we don't have to factor out A. We can skip that step. Make it perfect. All right, we're going to make this perfect. So in order to make it perfect, we are going to do our factor rectangle. Whatever we end up as our C will go into our purple boxes. Okay, so what number plus itself equals B, which is 26? All right, remember these have to be the same number. So first we're going to half it. So half of 26 is 13. Then we're going to square it. 13 squared is 169. Then we add it to both sides. So we're going to put 169 plus 169, because it's a positive, okay? Add it to the left, add it to the right, add it to both sides. Okay. So far we're there. Let's look at this right side here for a minute. So minus 168 plus 169 is 1. Okay. So now that we have our perfect square, we're going to go from our perfect square to our perfect square. We're going to simplify it. So this would be, we're going to take our x, remember, take your x, then one of your factors, which happens to be a positive, so x plus 13 squared. So you can take x plus 13 times x plus 13, and you can get right back to x squared plus 26x plus 169. Now, we learned how to solve these last week. So right now, x plus 13 is squared. We want to isolate our x, so we have to take the square root of, and what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Squaring and square rooting cancel each other out. X plus 13. Now the square root of 1 equals plus or minus 1. Now here's where a lot of my students make simple errors, okay? So we're trying to isolate x still. So on the same side is plus 13, so we're going to subtract 13 minus 13. Now please be very mindful. You are creating 2 math problems here. So x equals the positive 1 minus 13, and x equals the negative 1 minus 13. All right, 2 math problems, the positive and the negative of 1. So So 1 minus 13 is minus 12. Negative 1 minus 13 more is negative 14. And your two answers from least to greatest, negative 14 and negative 12. Now when you put this in the computer for your answer, it's only going to want the numbers least to greatest. All right, you can leave out the x equals. All right, let's try that again. Let's do that again. All right, so step 1, move C. All right, let's move our C. Our C is plus 14. So mathematically, we're going to subtract 14 from both sides. So x squared minus 10x, I'm going to add an empty box, which will fill here shortly. And then that is, what, negative 9? Negative 9. And if I put an empty box on the left, I'm going to put an empty box on the right. Okay. Step 2. Step 2 is factor out a. Well, a is 1, so, a is 1, so we don't have to factor that out. Next up, let's make it perfect. Let's make it perfect. All right, so we have our factor rectangle. We're going to factor, well, we don't know what C is, but once we find out, we're going to put in our purple boxes. Okay, and you factor it, so a number plus the same number, so they need to be the same. When you add them together, they equal your b, which is negative 10. So first we're going to half it, minus 5, minus 5. Then we're going to square it, 25 goes in my purple box. And we're going to add it to both sides. So plus 25, plus 25. Okay. So far, we're getting there. All right, now let's get to the solve it part. Well, minus 9 plus 25 equals 16. All right, now what is our perfect square? We're going to take the x, we're going to take the factor, x of x squared, and we squared negative 5, so x minus 5 squared. You take x minus 5 times x minus 5, you'll get x squared minus 10x plus 25. Okay? Now, again, we learned how to solve these last week. So x minus 5 squared, we're trying to isolate our x. So opposite of squaring is taking the square root of. So x minus 5 equals 4. So plus minus, can't forget that. So plus 5, x equals 4 plus 5, x equals minus 4 plus 5. That's 9, and that's 1. X equals 1 and 9. Now, when you're doing your reverse factoring, there's going to be one on your assignment where when you divide this in half, you'll get a decimal, and that's okay. Use it. Then you square the decimal, all right? And then it comes over here, and you add it to this, and then you take the square root of that decimal. And that's okay, all right? Don't let the decimals throw you. You can do the math. You've got this. All right, let's add that step 2 that we have been skirting around, all right? Let's do that. So, move C, step 1, move C. C is minus 72, so we're going to add 72 to both sides. Minus 4x squared plus 32x. We're going to put a box on the left equals 72. We're going to put a box on the right, because if you do the left, you got to do the right. Next up, we are going to factor out our a. In this case, our a is negative 4. And we're only factoring it out of these two terms. So minus 4, that leaves x squared minus 8x. And whatever this term is here in this box, it would have to be multiplied by negative 4 to get back up into here. Okay? We're going to deal with that in a little more depth a little later. Alright? So just keep following along. Alright, so we took out the negative 4. We factored out the negative 4. And you can distribute it back to make sure you did it right, because negative 4 times x squared is negative 4x squared. Negative 4 times negative 8x, well, negative times negative is a positive. 4 times 8 is 32, and x. Okay. We have factored out our a. Now we're going to make it perfect. Okay? So, we're making what's inside my parentheses perfect. So we're going to throw it over here. Our little factor rectangle. Okay, we're going to see what ends up in our purple box. So we're going to find a number plus that same number equals what? Negative 8. Negative 8. Remember, these must be the same. Alright, so first we're going to half it. Half of negative 8 is negative 4. Then we're going to square it. Negative 4 squared is 16. 16. Alright, add it to both sides. Okay. Now we factored out this negative 4. So we have to put it back in. So negative 4 times 16, well, that's negative 64. So what we put in this box is negative 64. Negative 64. Because you have to take what you took, what you factored out, multiply it by what's left in to get to what goes in this box. Alright? Negative 4 times 16 times positive 16 equals a negative 64. You have to add on the right the full amount of what you have on the left. Okay? So now we're here. Alright, 72 minus 64 is 8. Alright, we have got the x. We've got minus 4. So we've got x minus 4 squared. Because x minus 4 times x minus 4 would give you x squared minus 8x plus 16. Now we haven't gotten rid of this minus 4 yet. But we're about to. Alright, now we're trying to isolate our x. And right now you have negative 4 times the quantity of x minus 4 squared. So the first thing we have to get rid of is this times minus 4. So what's the opposite of times minus 4? Divided by minus 4. And what you do to one side, you have to do the other. So those cancel. Okay. And then you will end up with x minus 4 squared equals negative 2. So how do we isolate x? Because x minus 4 is squared right now. You take the square root. If you do to one side, you do to the other. Okay, that's x minus 4. I now have a giant problem. Okay, do you notice this negative sign below the radical, inside the radical? That causes a mathematical problem, okay? So when you have a negative sign under the radical. Negative sign under the radical equals no solution. All right. Now, what makes this no solution is the fact that there's a negative sign under the radical. Okay? It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that we have an A or we factored the A out. What makes this no solution is the negative sign under the radical. You will have one of these on your assignment, all right, only one, and you need to do the work to show, hey, this is why this is no solution, because I ended up with a negative under my radical. There are only 4 problems on the assignment, all right? So you have to show all your work. If you don't show all your work, see how this work we had to do, then you can't get credit, and I'll ask you to go back and show your work. Thank you.